let's get you a bit more context about what we should be thinking about 3 days after the election itself took place. Our senior politics reporter is Ziyanda Ngobo. She is on the floor of the Rock with us. And Ziyanda, plenty of questions still to be asked around the configuration, at the very least, of these inevitable coalitions.
Absolutely, and with 54 hung municipalities across the country, double the amounts that were hung in 2016, there's lots to consider. I think the ANC and the DA have plenty more to consider, given the fact that both these parties were on the decline. When you look at the outcomes of these elections, the ANC below 50%, this is an historic moment. Yes, there was a low voter turnout, but this has never happened before. And the context here, Ayanda, is that you saw national figures being rolled out as a part of the campaign trail for these local government elections, and the party went on an apology tour. But let me talk to Tasneem Essop as to whether or not this apology tour was even worth it. You had Ramaphosa being the face in the main for these local government elections, I suppose because the organization thought that just like 2019, he was still a popular figure. But we know that between then and now, there have been even more allegations of state capture. And in essence, this below 50% figure is an historic moment and a message that's been sent here, isn't it?
Sure, it's certainly symbolic for the ANC to dip below the 50% mark. And we'll see how much below that they end up by the end of today. I think the thing to keep in context is that the ANC has been on a slow decline in electoral support over numerous elections now. Those are both national and local government. The 2016 election really broke the mark for that, particularly in them losing, getting under 50% in a lot of the metros. And that in itself, set up what we're seeing now. The apology tour, yes. I mean, the ANC was going cap in hand and going around apologizing to people, saying, give us another chance. And we've been hearing this give us another chance narrative for a while now from the ANC. And it's important to realize that this is not working, right? The ANC needs to prove itself again as a governing party, as a ruling party. They're still governing the country. They need to prove themselves there so that voters go and vote for them. And that means the low voter turnout, one, so that voters actually go and turn out for them, and two, that they get, their share of those votes.
What tone should the ANC now adopt going forward, especially since if you listen to Paul Mashatile, Jesse Duarte and other leaders, it seems as though even as they're now faced with the reality of having to go into coalitions, it's almost as if they're saying, you must still come to us. Is that still the right messaging to send, given the fact that, in fact, this outcome is a strong message sent by the electorate?
Sure. Well, I think the simple thing here is that the ANC needs to show that it is capable of leading the country and resolving some of the critical issues in the country, right? So I know this is a local election, so we are looking at local issues. And a lot of those national issues come down to local issues. Yes, we're talking about corruption. Yes, we're talking about services. We're talking about electricity. We're talking about water, right? Those are key issues. But can the ANC resolve the key socio-political, economic questions in South Africa? And they have to show that they are able to do that, right? So I mean that's a key part of this. The other part is that they're saying now at the moment, they still got the most amount of votes in a lot of the metros, so they should get a first pick on putting together coalitions. Now that's interesting. I think in 2016 we saw that didn't work, right? The ANC may have had the larger portion of the vote, but they dipped below 50%, and coalitions were formed without them in the city of Johannesburg, for example. So, I mean, it's how they negotiate that. We're in coalition territory now, and it's unprecedented given the sheer scale of, how many hung councils we have. So they're going to have to, approach this in a very tricky way. Will they be able to, even if they do form coalitions, manage successful governments in those areas?
We're in 2021 now. There's about 3 years until 2024 for the national election. And if they don't do something, they're likely to continue on this downward trajectory. Is 3 years enough for the ANC to prove to the electorate that they really mean what they say when they say, I'm sorry?
Well, it's 3 years, against many years now of decline, right? And it's going to take a mammoth effort for the ANC to do that, right? I'm not prepared to say, look, the ANC is going to suffer massive blows in the next election. I think this decline will continue. The kind of trend that we've seen will probably continue, and it's what can the ANC do. We might see coalition provinces in the next national and provincial election, right? So there's a lot of lessons to be drawn from this, and I think the ANC has a lot of reflecting to do, and they say they have been doing that, but for me it comes down to the fundamental issues, and it's although the DA is not a ruling party across South Africa, the DA also has a lot of reflecting to do in this.
And moment. I was just about to get there. I mean, I want to juxtapose the two because it's very interesting that the top two political parties in the country are on a steady decline. That is also an indictment, especially because the DA is the official opposition in the country. You would think that the inadequacies of the governing party would naturally lead the electorate to the official opposition, but that isn't so. They too are on the decline. So what exactly is it about these political parties? Is it the sins of incumbency, or is this a message to say that our political system in and of itself is what the electorate is not happy with, and not necessarily those who occupy the space?
Sure. So I mean, I think voters and non-voters this election have really punished both the DA and the ANC, right? And we see that because, there was speculation in the early hours about whether the low voter turnout, what impact would it have on the big political parties. And we've seen that for the DA and the ANC, it actually has not had a good impact on them at all. I think there's two different things going on here when you look at the ANC and the DA. The DA was in a prime position to really, to have growth, to use the challenges that the ANC is having, and the general sentiment around the ANC going into this election to their benefit, right? They failed to do this. In 2016, they did they grew, they did well in certain metros. So it's a very different election for them, right? I think all the parties are going to try and spin this at the moment, and we've already seen that.
Yeah.
This is positive.
Yeah.
This is where we did well. The DA is saying they won one of the municipalities in KZN,
yes.
and that's a historic victory for them. So yes, there is a nuance to this, but if you just look at it overall, right, that doesn't hold. So for the DA, who's run a particular, who've been trying for the last little while to get their house in order, really, to put a message to the electorate that they feel they can stand behind, and to sort out their internal issues. There's a lot of reflecting to do from their side.
Certainly a lot of reflecting to do for the big political parties, but I suppose some celebrations for the smaller political parties, and lots to talk about how fickle our electorate is becoming now, and how they're really exercising their political right through the vote to choose who they want in power, Ayanda and Michelle, but also to say, well, the sins of incumbency are now catching up with the political parties who've previously been given a chance to govern, and simply 27 years into our democracy, they're showing that they've had enough.
Absolutely, Ziyanda Ngoba, thanks very much indeed. Live to us there from the floor of the National Results Operations Center here in Tshwane.